Hi, and welcome to another edition of The Seven Show. I'm in my studio, and it looks a lot different. So I had a really cool idea, well, not a really cool idea. I just had an idea. I'm gonna show you what I do when I set up a room and I set up my acoustic treatments. I'll kind of go through that process and I'll show you what the process is. So I started to do that. I set up the room, I set up some cameras and I shot the room without treatments in it. And then I brought all the treatments in, well, some of the treatments in, and I set those up and I shot the room again and I was filming all of this, and it wasn't exactly turning out very well. I wasn't seeing the drastic corrections I was hoping to see. And I also was noticing something else interesting was going on, is that sitting in the console, in front of the console, I had a very tight sweet spot, maybe 3 feet wide. If I moved outside of that 3 foot area, back and forth, if I moved down to that area, the bass response was drastically dropping. I was getting some very severe nulls in this space. I was kind of hoping some of the treatments would alleviate that, but they didn't even touch them. So now, granted, I hadn't put any treatments on the ceiling at that point yet, but I knew that they weren't going to help in this situation. So what the problem was, is I had this slanted ceiling and I'm sitting in the middle like how I'm sitting now. The sound is coming from the monitor and it's hitting there and it's echoing off and it's coming to me. And it's coming from the monitor, it's hitting over there and it's echoing. So if I'm in the middle, they're pretty much arriving from the speaker to me and from the echo to me. They're arriving more or less at the same time. But if I move off to the side, what happens is, if I move off to this side, this echo is taking a lot longer to get to me than this one over here, and this one's coming a little bit quicker. And that was causing some really drastic nulls, and they were canceling, the echoes were canceling each other out. And I could treat the ceiling, but it would have to be pretty drastic. I mean, we're in maybe, 2 or 3 foot thick treatments, and I just don't have the space for that, because these were lower frequencies. It was probably happening in the highs, but I was mostly focused on the lows, 1,000 hertz and below. And it was significant. So I had to rethink the space. So what I did was I figured I had to turn 90 degrees, and I actually moved some speakers around and I did some rough shots, and moving to side was much better in sort of this temporary setup I had. So I got some floor plan software and I plotted out how I had it set up originally, and then kind of mostly to scale. It was a little hard, but yeah, close enough. And then I started picking up those elements and sliding them around and figuring out the best way to lay out the room. It was beneficial to move things around, not just for sound, but just for functionality and usable space in the area. Because it's not a huge space, it's okay, but you get a bunch of keyboards and drums in here and the space starts to get small real quick. So then I got the treatments up and everything, and I've worked in here a little bit, and it sounds much better, but I haven't shot the room yet. So this video, let's look at some of the original graphs that I got out of the room, and I'll show you the problems. Then we'll come back and we'll shoot the room and we'll see what it looks like, because I don't know yet. It's going to be much better, but I'm not sure how much better. So, okay, let's get to that now. All right, so let's look at my original acoustic shots of the room and kind of get an idea of what those look like. So I had set up the microphone in the center equal between the left and the right speaker, kind of in the natural sweet spot of where you want to sit. This is shooting through the Atom left-hand speaker in the center, and that's sort of what my frequency response looked like, 20 to 20,000 hertz. It's not terrible. It's okay. I had this little dip right here, about 120 hertz. We sort of drop off about 40 to 50 hertz. It sort of drops down. Not a great response, but that's sort of natural, what you would expect those speakers. But in here, it's okay-ish. Not beautiful. If we move off to the left-hand side, it changes. So I have a much bigger drop here at 120 hertz. Some kind of big fluctuations here. If we move off to the right-hand side, sort of different. My frequency comes back at 120 hertz. If we just compare left to the right-hand side, and this would be about 5 feet difference between the two. Those sounds, there's a significant difference there. That's probably not what you want, especially with this dip here. So I added some treatments in. So let's look at, here is the same position with the treatments in the front, and we'll compare it without the treatments, and it looks virtually the same. There just wasn't enough treatments there, and they were in the wrong spot. I was kind of hoping to get rid of some of these nulls, but just the position of the speakers in the room, I wasn't going to get it with the position of those big, huge treatments. And it didn't improve moving off to the left. I still had, so let's go back here with, well, this one's closer to being similar with the treatments, but it wasn't improving anything. So that's when I decided to rethink the layout of the space. So let's take a minute and I'll show you sort of what I did to redesign the space. I used this site, floorplancreator.net. It's really simple to kind of set up and start using stuff. This was my original layout. So this was my console. This is sort of my, when I think of the usable space, this was the rectangle of usable space, because these are the beams that come down, or the posts that come down right here. So this was kind of my workable, more or less usable space. And then I could fit some things, like my modular rack could fit in that angled ceiling space. These are the stairs that go down. So this is my console. I had a desk here for an extra workstation. This was a keyboard rack. This was my server cabinet. This is my rack of modular synth, or rack mount synths. This was a keyboard rack, drums, my workstation. So this was more or less my usable space in that setup. I took that, I put it over here, and this is how much more space I get with the new configuration. And the only thing I lost in this was I got rid of this desk. I took this desk out. But so this is, my drums are still in the same location, server rack, effects rack, console. This is my workstation. This is a keyboard rack that was sitting here. This rack was this one. So I gained a lot of space in the redesign, and not only does the room sound better, but I have more. I'm using almost all of this workable space now. Room EQ Wizard's all set up. I am going out of the little computer through the Scarlett interface to the Behringer to the speakers, and I'm going to A/B between the Kali and the Atom A7s. Neither of those speakers have really been tweaked or tuned to this room. I'm getting a baseline at this point. That's all I'm doing. And I'm bypassing the console. I'm not going to go through that right now. Really what I'm looking for is I want to see if moving all of this and having my treatments up is giving me a consistent read from left to right, because that was a big problem before. So I haven't done this yet. I don't even know what it's gonna do. So this will be interesting. So what I'm gonna do is I'll do a shot. I'm coming out of the right speakers. I'm gonna do a shot in the center. Then I'm gonna do one off to the right. I'm not gonna come over to the left because that's where I'm sitting. But that'll give us a general idea if I've got those nulls kind of under control. Then for fun, we'll put the mic back past the center point and we'll see what we get there. Really, I'm only interested in the front of the board back about 3 feet. I don't care that much if it doesn't sound great in the back of the room. I just want it in the center point where I'm gonna be sitting and mixing. And I want it to be consistent left to right. I don't want any nulls. If I slide over to this side of the console, I don't want to have a dip in frequencies anywhere. I want it to be fairly consistent. So that was the whole point of moving this all around. Let's see what we get. All right, let's look at the results of those tests. So this is the center spot, and we've gotten rid of that. We had that big dip between 100 and 120 or so, and it's more or less smoothed out now. I don't have that anymore. This looks a little jagged, but it's not a bad response. I can tweak and tune this a little bit more and kind of flatten this out a bit more, but this is not bad. And especially that we've gotten rid of that big null here, I see this as a big improvement. So let's look at moving over to the right side. A little bit of variation here. This has stayed the same here, where we had the big severe change at 120. That's evened out. A little bit of variations, but this is not bad. I'm pretty happy with this. And when we look, let's go back behind the center spot to see. Look at that. That's at 184. We have a big null going on right there. We have another one here. It sits a little bit lower just because of volume. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with these results. I'll do a wider test and put the microphone in a lot more locations in the front of the console just to get sort of an average and see how to EQ this all out to flatten out the speakers. But I think that this solved my problems. Let's look at the waterfalls just real quick. So I have this weirdo thing going on. I had that in my first ones, where I have this big long trail at 100. So if I look at my noise floor, look, I have this solid line. This is actually caused by the fan in my workstation. That's what's causing this. And what's interesting is when we move to the right-hand side, it shifts tone over here because it's hitting the wall, bouncing off slightly different. So it kind of changes the frequency of it just a little bit, but that's the fan, in my main workstation. You don't see it when I move back about 6 feet or something, but so I have a decay here at about 80. That takes a little bit of time to trail off. These are not bad. It's a lot tighter than the original ones, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I could probably tighten this up a little bit more, but overall, pretty good. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with these results. I think as my initial results, even though they're my second initial result, I'm on the right track. I still have to tune my speakers a little bit and set up some EQ a little bit, and then possibly some more treatments. There's about 20 treatments in here right now, 20, 21, something like that. And I think I'd be okay leaving it as is. But as I work in the space and I get more familiar with it, then I might put some kind of on the back walls or like over in here. But I don't know if I need it yet, because this is the important part of the room. And you know, if I'm sitting over here at the drums and the sound coming from the speakers isn't perfect, it doesn't have to be, because that's not where I'm mixing. That's just where I'm playing. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy. And I think it sort of demonstrates my failure, that I approached this room like it was a regular rectangular room. I looked at the floor space, the usable floor space in the room, and not the room itself. I should have noticed that these angled ceilings are going to cause a problem. But you know, you set up in a regular rectangular room, you set up with the short ends in front of you and behind you, the long walls are on the sides. You set up the mixing board about a third of the way from the wall into the room, and that's sort of your starting point. And then you do some acoustic shots and you end up moving the console either forward or backwards or whatever, because every room is going to have nulls and problems. And so you kind of approach it in sort of a regular way for normal rooms. Then you hang your treatments where you need them and go from there. But this isn't a regular room, and I should have realized that, but that's all right. It worked out, and I'm actually really happy with the layout in the room. I'm happy with the way it sounds, and now it's just a matter of tweaking it. So hopefully you learned something like I did. Go into your room with an open mind, and don't be afraid to turn everything 90 degrees, I guess. Okay, I don't really have anything else to say. That was kind of an interesting adventure. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the follies, and I'll see you next time.